I am Ken Ferlic, and I'm going to talk about our creativity and sort of its impact on diverse cultures. What you'll find is it's very important to understand a little bit about this creative imagination and what goes on inside of us and how it comes out in our cultures. Now, this talk isn't about developing or improving your creativity as such. It's really more about giving some aspects of our creative imagination that impact cultures. And I think you will see it as we step through, because it's really kind of fundamental for where a lot of cultures come from. When we talk about diverse cultures, you're talking about different groups with different skills, talents, religions, philosophies, beliefs, political beliefs, sexual orientation, you name it. There's groups that form cultures and within cultures and the whole works. The one thing that they all have in common is they all wish to have the freedom to express themselves. And I think this is a very important understanding, is that these groups are trying to express themselves, but more importantly, the individuals within those groups are trying to express themselves. And this is something where I want to bring your attention to, of what's kind of going on in the person. So this is really about our creative imagination, and in my exploration of creativity, I use something called a creativity perspective. The creativity perspective is where you hold your creativity sacred. And the question is, what does it mean to hold your creativity sacred? It is to allow yourself to explore options, at least in your own mind. If you pay attention to your thoughts and how you think, something comes up and you want to make a decision and you look at options, and you'll find that you dismiss a lot of options very quickly because of your conditioning of the world you grew up in, rather than being free to play with the option and say, what if I did this? What if this happened? What if I should do this versus that? And you look at the options, you begin to see that there are a lot more possibilities than we ever give ourselves credit for. Now, the question is, how do you bring them out into the culture that you live in? Because cultures form based upon those groups of people who are trying to express themselves, and we all need others to survive in this world. I don't think there's anybody that can survive exclusively by themselves, because if you think about it, even a young child, when they're first born, they need that mother for the milk that's given to them to grow and become a functioning human. So throughout life, we will always need others. And the question is, how do we relate to them? Well, one of the things that prompted my exploration of creativity is seeing all the differences that I ran across in all the different challenges in my life and jobs. If there was a way to view creation that no matter what a person believed, they would have an experience of it in some way, that they would point to that experience and say, see, what I believe is true because I've had this experience. And what I found is creation is really magical enough to do that. Now, does that mean that when a person believes something, it will be there physically the way that they think? Or is it just something that they interpret as verifying what they believe? And the answer is sometimes it's both ways. So I looked at was, okay, how does our mind work to create these things? And what I come to find out is that people carry within them little seeds. You could call them ideas, you can call them desires, but they kind of grow like flowers. They need to be nurtured. It will start from a seed, it will grow, it will blossom, it will flower, and then its fragrance goes into the world. And when you begin to see that people are carrying these seeds that grow and blossom in life, you start looking at them a little differently. You kind of have to stand back and say, geez, I wonder what's going on inside them that they're going in this direction versus that direction. And one thing that became very obvious is we all have what are called true needs. A true needs of any creation will, when met, will allow that creation to grow and blossom. It's like a flower. If you have a flower in your house and it's not growing correctly, you say, okay, does it need water? Does it need sunlight? Does it need some nutrients in the soil? If you really care for that flower, you're going to give it what it needs. If you say, I love this flower, but I'm not going to put it in the sunlight, then you don't really love it. And this is true for people, that if you really love somebody, are you willing to nurture their true needs? Are you willing to give them what they need to grow and blossom, or do you give them what you want to give them versus what they need to have? And this is something that's very difficult for people, because sometimes we're asked to do things for people we would prefer not to, but that's what they need to grow. So I'll just leave it there, because that can get us into a lot of conversations. And by the way, if I didn't mention it, if you have a pencil and piece of paper, you might want to write up some of your questions as we're talking, and I'll be happy to address any of them we have time for. Now, one thing to realize is to create is to bring something into existence. Now, to create lies on a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum is you create something that is a complete copy of something that already exists. So in that case, the mind needs to be very aware of every detail to be able to create that exact copy. But if you're going to create something new, original, never previously experienced, never seen, the mind has no idea of what it looks like. Now, the important point here is our life is a new and original creation. Nobody has lived our life. Nobody will live our life after we're gone. And as we go through life, we have no idea what life's going to give us. It's totally original, which puts us into a certain level of anxiety. It's like, what do I do? So we default to our past programming. We default to how things have been in the past. So in some ways, we keep reinventing the past in a new way, rather than being open to what does the moment offer us and how do we deal with that moment. Now, this brings up two things that were key to the exploration that I never expected to find. One is that within each person is what I've come to call a creative spirit, or it's a heartfelt passion. We each carry things that we have come here into this physical creation that we wish to bring forth in our life. And sometimes it may take a whole lifetime to do it. Sometimes it may be done in a few years. And there's more than one, but there are things that we carry within our heart. It's a heartfelt passion. It is sort of like a drowning person. They are grasping for air. And if they don't get the air, they drown. In the same way, this heartfelt passion is something the person has to do in their life. And if they don't do it, they'll feel something is missing in life. Something's not working. Something's not right. And they keep looking for something and they don't know what it is. And a big part of it is what they're being drawn to create. And I bring this up because a lot of people run through life trying to figure out what makes them happy, and they can't figure it out because they never sat down and says, okay, what's really going on inside of me? What makes me happy? What gives me this passion, this desire to live life and engage life? Then the question is, how do I express that into the world? This brings up the fact that we have to learn to dance with the world. One thing that I found that really kind of surprised me, it's sort of obvious, and that is we each are incredibly unique, and every perspective we have is a subjective perception. Nobody sees life the way we do. Nobody feels our pain. Nobody feels our joy. Nobody sees and experiences creation as we do. We're totally unique. Now, what happens is several things. One thing is, in this uniqueness, we look for people who seem to have similar type interests, similar type thoughts. So that naturally leads to ways of being and different groups of people. So we end up gravitating to people who seem to share what we are experiencing. Now, the problem is, since we're totally unique, we can assume somebody's experiencing what we are, but they're not. And the question is, how do we learn to dance with the world and dance with those other people, that we don't end up denying ourselves what's inside of us that we're being drawn to experience, and the world is asking something else. So it's a hard dance, and we all have to go through it. Now, I have the joy of being a little older than most of you, so I can look back in hindsight and say, hey, here's good decisions, here's bad decision, here's what was key. Me being at your age, The question I had when I was 19 years old was, I want to choose to become wise. There's an old proverb which says, a person learns from their experience, a wise person learns from the experience of others, a fool never learns. And I thought, why do I need to make mistakes? Why don't I become wise and look what other people do and see what doesn't work for them? And then I don't have to make those mistakes. And I found it very, for lack of a better word, enlightening to see how people live their life and then ask, why are they living it that way versus another way? And when I began to understand that, I began to understand people in one way or another are looking to satisfy this passion in their heart. And this passion in their heart is more important than we realize. As I said, our life is a new original creation, never experienced by ourselves or anyone else. So how do we live it? The question is, I don't know, except for one thing. I come to find that we each have what I would call is a life path. I don't know what your beliefs are, what you feel about creation. I'm just reporting what I observe, and all the people I work with is we come into this world, and before we come in, we kind of lay out a travel plan. It's like, I'm going to leave the United States. I'm going to fly to Southeast Asia, maybe go down to Australia, maybe stop up in China. But I got an itinerary, and I will go to different places and stop and have experiences. Our life path is like that, but it's improvisational. In other words, we say, I'm going to fly to Australia and spend a week there. And the answer is, what am I going to do there? And the answer is, I have no idea. I just need to know I got to go to Australia. And you live it improvisationally. You meet people, sort of like the breakout rooms. All of a sudden, you're thrown into a room with 5 or 6 people, and they say, okay, what do we have in common, if everything? What are your desires? What are your passion? What are your interests? That's what you were sharing, really. When you say, what are your hobbies? What you're really saying is, what's the passion in your heart to experience in this world? But we do it every day in our life, but we don't realize it. And this is why I say, when you begin to see that and you start looking at different cultures, you begin to see how people group together to have this experience of their heart. But the question is, are they buying into other people's ideas, or are they truly living what they feel serves them? And this brings up an important point. We have to learn to discern our personal truth. What resonates with us? What makes us feel alive? What makes us feel, yes, I can agree with this because it resonates within me. You know, some of this seems very ungrounded thinking, but in reality, this is the essence of what we're doing. It's like this energy within our heart in this to engage life is really what's calling us forth. And we're all here for that same reason. We're all trying to share that energy and figure out what really works for us at any given moment. This life path is very intriguing. As I studied it, I come to see that life really grooms us. As we go through life, we get experiences that prepares us for later experiences. In my bio, I said, I orchestrated a band when I was in a Navy Reserve Officer Training Corps for the unique instruments. Quite simply, I was in a band, a college band with 100 pieces. I had this little NROTC band that had 16 people, and I looked at the music they were given, and it was arranged for 100 pieces. I have 16 pieces. Obviously, they're not going to sound very good. So I had to sit there and rearrange it for the talents and abilities of the people in that band. And when that was done, they sounded really good. I learned to manage that way. What is before me? Who are the people? What are their talents? What are their abilities? What's being asked in the job? And can I give what's being asked with the people I have, or do I got to go supplement my talents? This is true for all of us in any situation. This is true for large cultures. It's like, what are our problems that we face, and how do we deal with them? And do we have the right mix of people? Or are people in jobs they shouldn't be in because of ego, prestige, or whatever, but they're not really functioning. So, these are questions that come up from the standpoint of what really is allowing a person to be motivated in the work they do. In fact, I found out about the creative passion in the individuals when I was walking through the machinery spaces for a nuclear power plant. A gentleman walked into a room with me and he said, "Something's wrong." I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Something doesn't sound right." I said, "Okay, let's go find it." 30 minutes later, we found a pump that was failing. And I looked at this man in amazement. But here he walked into this room and in a minute knew something was wrong. People are always walking through this room. Nobody recognizes it. He stepped in, he saw it, and he looked for it. That was his passion. He loved machinery. His machinery were his children, and he cared for them. When a person's in their passion, they make very few mistakes. So what I found out is when people are in their passion, they don't need a lot of supervision. They will function extremely well. The people that are there for a paycheck are the ones who make mistakes because they don't care about what they're doing. They just want their paycheck. So this became very important for me managerially, is how do I find the right passion and the right people to fulfill the functions that needed to be performed. So it takes us back to what's inside each individual. Now, one thought I need to leave you with, one is we each have unique gifts, and we each need to be given the space to get in touch with those gifts and bring them out into the world. I think the greatest gift we can give somebody is inspire them to live their truth, what really works for them, to find what their truth is, and then empower them the best we can to live it and bring it out into the world. Because I know that the solutions that people are looking for all of our world problems lie in the heart of individuals that make up that society. And the question is, are the people able to bring that passion out in a way that's constructive for the society and for themselves? So it's about dancing with the world. I taught my son how to play the clarinet, and I told him, I said, there's 3 ways to practice. One, you practice for the conductor. You give them what they want. It's to give the world what it wants. Then I say you need to practice your technique, improve your ability on your instrument. That's the work you do inside yourself to understand yourself and what it is you need to do to have a satisfaction in life and what you need to do to survive in the world. And the third way I said was to practice what you love. That will give you the energy and inspire you to do the other 2. So it's something we each need to learn to do. What is it in life that really inspires us, that makes us want to jump into it and do it? And when we do it in some way, we'll find fulfillment in life and we'll be able to endure the other 2 because we'll have the energy that we need. Now, something very important. Everything that has ever been created in this world, other than by what people would call God or nature, was created by humans, and it started with a single thought in a human being. Doesn't matter what it is. Every religion, every medical practice, every engineering achievement, everything started with a single thought in a human being. To say that a single thought can change the world has been done repeatedly in the human evolution. And what I want to leave you with is, you may have the single thought that can change the world because of your uniqueness and your unique perception to see something and to see how something works that other people don't see. And that's why it's so important. We need to learn to have the strength and the faith in ourselves to live our truth, because our truth may be the answer people are seeking. So I would encourage you to get in touch with yourself and say, what really gives me a passion for life? What's really important? That is what really will make a big difference in the world. And we each have to contribute our part. And that takes me to the fact that there's an orchestration in the universe, whether you believe it or not. Everybody's life is being orchestrated within a much larger creation. The way I'd like to view it is, Every cell in the human body has a function. From my understanding, if I go back and got my notes correctly, there are something like 28 to 36 trillion cells in the human body. Each of those cells perform a specific function. Right now, there are 8 billion people in this world. 8 billion versus 36 trillion. A trillion is 1,000 times bigger than a billion. So if you don't believe that you have a function orchestrated with everybody else in the world, I would say look at your own body. One cell out of 36 trillion cells is important to your body. You are one out of maybe 8 billion peoples in the world, and that's a small percentage when compared to something like the human body. So I would highly recommend you think about that you have a role to play in this world. It's embedded in your heart. It's embedded in your passion. And when you're able to get in touch with it and live it, you perform a wonderful task. If you talk about cancer in the body, what is the cancer in the body? The cancerous cells lose touch with what they're supposed to be doing. Rather than being constructive to the body, they eat away at the body. In the same way, we can be cancerous in our society if we're not living our truth and performing our role. And now this is not the role that society says we do. It's the dance that we do with that society, where we dance with our uniqueness and society. So I would like to offer that to you because we need your creativity. We need your unique perception. We need your ability to see what you see. Now, one observation that I made is that the human mind cannot fully comprehend the vastness of creation and how it works. I mean, whether you belong to a religion, whether you're a great believer in science and you think science is going to come up with the ultimate solution, or the religion has the ultimate solution, that human mind that believes that cannot fully comprehend the infinity of creation. So we have to be willing to sit back and say, okay, creation, how do you really work? What do I need to know for my role in this world? Now, what I'm sharing with you is what I have learned in working many different disciplines with many different people, and say, what is the common denominator? And one of the common denominators is what is our unique passion, and what are we being asked to give and dance with the world? And two other things I want to bring up. One is the power of our intention. Our mind is a very powerful creative force. When we really want something and desire it and we hold it, there's sort of a magic in creation that calls to us events and circumstances to give us some kind of experience of what we desire. Now, you may say, I've been desiring something for years. Well, that could very well be, but you may be desiring something totally opposite your life path. It's like trying to swim upstream in the river rather than flowing with the river, because we get programmed. We come into this world with a family, and normally the parents try and raise their children the best they can, but they never consider the fact that maybe this child is here for something special and I have to nurture it. It's like I tried to tell my mother when she talked about my son. I says, Mom, I do not own him. He's not my son. He's entrusted to me. He's a unique creation here to fulfill what he came to do. I do not own him. And she would say, what do you mean he's not your son? Mom, you're not getting it. This is true for each of us, that the people are all here for their own unique reasons. And the question is, can we learn to help nurture those reasons and create a structure that allows those reasons to be nurtured? And they're taught that they have to be respectful of themselves and their desires, but also the desires of everybody else. And the question is, how can we dance together? And that's the biggest challenge, is learning to dance with the world and our uniqueness within whatever structure we're in, and help evolve those structures that help others to meet and give their uniqueness. One way that I found that's very helpful is to look through the eyes of compassion. And what I mean by this is when you look at anybody, especially if you don't like what they're doing, is to say, if I grew up in their shoes and I lived their life, would I really be any different? And when you begin to see that sometimes we're the product of the world we grew up in, and we didn't have somebody there to kind of nurture us and say, hey, do you really want to do that? Does that really serve you and who you are? Or are you just responding to the world based upon the past? So it requires us to have a little awareness about why do we do what we do? Are we willing to kind of pull the string or follow the chain of events that are causing us to think the way we do or how we got to where we are? So I will leave you with the fact that the eyes of compassion can be very revealing as to what's going on. Now, something else that may not be obvious is we can't give what we don't have. If I ask you for the equivalent of $100 US because I need it now, unless you have it, you can't give it to me. But if you have it, you can give it to me. But this is true for anything. If you want to give somebody love, you have not learned how to love and nurture your true needs for you to grow and expand and to blossom, what are you giving that other? Are you giving them love or are you giving them obligation? So I would just recommend that whatever's going on, are you dealing with the true needs of the creation, and do you have what is needed inside of yourself to give them? So I would pay attention to, have you nurtured your true needs, and have you allowed yourself to grow and to blossom into your own unique beauty? And you all have it. And the question is, can we look for it in others and help it to come out in others? I said this is about creativity. Most people have put their creativity into a box. And whenever they run into difficulties in life, they usually push out on the sides of the box. They'll change jobs, they'll move, they'll go to a different environment, and they seem to have gotten rid of all their problems. But they haven't, because there's two other parts to the box, the top of the box and the bottom of the box. The top of the box is your relationship with the unseen. Doesn't matter what you choose relative to your beliefs about the unseen. The question is, do you have a comfortable relationship with the unseen world? Are you very anxious about the unseen world? And because of that anxious, there's a lot of fear in your life. I would suggest that you look at, what is your relationship with the unseen? In terms of the bottom of the box, you have your relationship with the physical world, your physical body, and your relationship with nature. And there you're challenged with, are you aware of your body wisdom? Are you aware of how your body talks to you? Are you aware of the pains and annoyances that you have in your body? And are they communicating to you? You know, obviously, when you're hungry, you hear the body and you say, hey, I'm hungry. But if you have a pain in your body, have you asked, where does this pain come from? Is it something I'm not giving my body? Is it something I'm not doing in my life that's causing problems? There was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Sarno. He spent his life dealing with back pain. And he said, I can always find something wrong with the back. I can find a slipped disc. I can find a pinched nerve. I can find whatever. He says, but it all boils down to the mind being stressed and the muscles not being relaxed enough to support the body because of the stress in the mind. And I know that I've seen people who have got rid of their back problems when they dealt with the stress in their mind and listened to what their body was talking to about and telling them. So, you know, I'd highly recommend you look at your own body. And then again, plugging into the physical world, there is the issue of sexuality. There's the issue of dealing with nature. And one thing I will say about sexuality, it's one of the most creative forces available to us. I mean, everybody's aware of that. Sexuality can lead to the procreation of children, but there's an energy that also causes us to change our life. Whenever you have sexual feelings about anything, The energy is calling you to look at how you would change your life. I mean, sexuality is used tremendously amount in advertising. Why? Because the sexual energy is about creating life, and it's not just physical life as in a child. It's in changing our life, how we interact in the world and interact with the world. So everybody here is relatively young. I'm sure there's always feelings about sex and sexuality. I suggest you explore it and say, what am I really feeling? What am I being asked to create? What life is being asked to be stirred up within me for what I am feeling? And then use wisdom in terms of how you act on whatever you feel. Now, one thing that's probably not obvious is we live in a predatory world. We're all going to eat something. We're all going to breathe something. We're all going to drink something. Now, the question is that all it's about? We also have energy. We can feed off other people's energy, and they can feed off our energy. One of the questions is, who are we willing to give our life energy to be eaten by them and used by them, but we give it in more of a communion, in a sharing, because we're willing to share what we have with another? Or do we take from another and consume it and take it for our own self-benefit, never realizing that we're taking something from that other individual and eating from them? So I would just recommend you contemplate, what does it mean to live in a predatory world, that we can eat the energy of another or share our energy with another? And then look at the world we're in, look at the society, look at the way we have done these exchanges from a more communal base, because they all ultimately boils down to what individuals have gotten together and come to an agreement about how we will live our life. And the big question is, how have I come to an agreement about how I'm going to live my life and then share my life and dance with the world? So I went through a lot of topics very quickly. I covered most of the points a little quicker than I had hoped. I will say in summary, and then I will open it up for questions, is one, you have a life path. You have a part to play within a larger orchestration of creation, and it's embedded in what you feel and what gives you a passion for life that brings forth your energy that allows you to dance with the world. You got to learn to feel it and listen to it. Mind can be very, very powerful. It's very useful, but mind is limited. It will never know the infinity of creation, and at times we'll have difficulty trying to figure out what's going on, and we have to trust that our life path will carry us to where we need to go. And that brings up something else about the uniqueness of our abilities. The one thing I've become very aware of is that many people are empathic, and they have the ability to sense and read energy, especially in others. And yet this is something that's unique to them and not common. So sometimes they think they're a little crazy, and it's hard to be with people because they keep feeling all this energy of other people. So they look for, how do I work with this? Who do I talk to? How do I understand what's going inside of me? This is something we all face in our uniqueness. Our uniqueness is different from everybody else. And the question is, we have to give ourselves a certain amount of permission to explore ourselves and what it is we're really sensing and seeing and how we are sensing. And then talk to people and eat and digest what we're told. You don't believe everything you're told. You got to say, okay, does this resonate with me? Does this feel correct? Or is there something that doesn't feel right? Just because somebody's successful in life and they say, this is what I did in my life to be successful, and we try and copy them. And my answer is, given the idea that we have a life path, their life path maybe was designed to be successful in life and have a lot of money. And what they think they did to get the money has nothing to do with why they have the money. And I've seen this again and again. And I've often wondered when people say, I want to create this, I want to have this experience. I often wonder, Are they creating it, or are they just reading their future, what's already destined for them, if they pay attention to their own passion? So there are a lot of unanswered questions, especially when we get into this world of how do we create and how do we create our experiences. And I would like to leave you with, as you start looking at the diversity of cultures and the diversity of people, you may want to ask yourself, why are you doing what they're doing the way they're doing it and choosing what they want? Because when you start looking at those questions, you start seeing inside the individual and seeing their passion. And I found that sometimes to listen to what people say and then maybe say, hey, have you ever thought about this? And they say, no, I never thought about that. And yet that may be the doorway that they're looking for. And your unique observation and unique ability to listen may be exactly what that other person needs to find their path.